And we are pleased to welcome Rod Carley, who is the 2009 TVO Big Ideas Best Lecturer Competition winner. Teaches theater arts at Canadore College in North Bay. Welcome to TVO.
Thank you, Steve.
And congratulations on your victory.
Thank you very much.
How'd you get the news?
I got the news on Tuesday afternoon. I got a phone call at 2 in the afternoon, not last week, exactly. And Mike from marketing called up, and I was doing a lot of things, and there was this quiet call. I thought he was calling to say, you know, your car's ready, you know, you can pick it up at the garage. But he was there, and he announced that I had won, and I was in a subtle state of shock throughout the rest of the day.
Well, let's find out a little bit about you. Where are you from originally?
Brockville, Ontario, spawned in Brockville,
Okay,
Ontario.
and how'd you end up in North Bay then?
I went to theater school at York University, and while I was there, I had all these acquaintances I made who were there from North Bay in creative writing or in acting, whatever, and there was this gene pool all coming south to York. And through the ensuing years, I would do guest workshops around the province, and there would always be people popping up from North Bay. And in the mid-90s, I was doing a workshop, and long and short, I got invited up to North Bay to do a workshop there. Led to me adjudicating a theater festival in Timmins in the north, and I was invited to come to North Bay and direct a show in the fall of '98. Had a wonderful time. I was looking for a change of life at that point, and ended up starting a professional summer repertory theater company. And I've been there now, what is it, 11 years now?
10, 11 years.
Yeah.
Good for you.
Yeah, that's
Do you feel like a Northern Ontarian yet?
I feel like a richly adopted Northern Ontarian is how I feel. Yeah. You know, this thing with the North is real, and I really love that about being in the North.
What do you love about teaching?
Teaching? I think what I love about teaching is when I watch one of my students get it. What I mean by that is it may be, in what I teach, an acting exercise, it may be a concept, or they may just get this moment of they figure something out in their own lives. And when that light bulb goes on, and they get that moment of a eureka discovery, there's nothing better, because I think that's what it's all about, is to put them on that path. And then I think we know we've done our job. People
watching you have probably figured out already that you are a trained actor. I mean, you are a slightly more dramatic person than I usually have in that chair. Slightly differently dressed from most of the people I have in that chair. Do you feel in some respects that gives you a leg up as a lecturer?
Well, I think where it does help is I think good lecturing is also like good storytelling. And you've got to have, or a good piece of music. There's got to be tempo shifts, there's got to be bridges, there's got to be gear shifts within it. And I think from maybe the acting, or the directing background as well, is I try to sort of direct and sculpt a lecture where it does go off in different sort of sidebars and roadways, and to keep, because it's about keeping them engaged, right? And with attention spans ever dwindling with the new millennials, you've really got to find ways to keep those students hooked in.
Well, and you've been, I gather, dozens and dozens and dozens of acting jobs, directing jobs, and so on. So why did you switch from that to teaching? Well,
you know, it's always been simultaneous, Steve. As soon as I'd worked at the Stratford Festival for a couple of years as an assistant director in the early '90s. And after leaving that, I ended up getting guest artist contracts at George Brown Theatre School, University of Windsor. And all through my work, I've always sort of done them together, either directing and sometimes acting and teaching. And I really think they go together, because I think a really good director in many ways is mentoring his acting company. So, I hope I always can keep that balance of them all working together, because they feed each other.
Okay, but you got to North Bay and you had this notion of creating a theater arts program.
Yes.
What made you think this program in that location would work?
A lot of it was when I ran the Nipissing Stage Company for 6 seasons, and I got to know so many people in the North and saw this talent base. I also saw what was missing in the North was this need I felt for a conservatory acting school. There was nothing else really like it anywhere in northeastern Ontario. So I'd approached the president of Canadore College, Barbara Taylor, with this idea, and she let me run with it and research it and look into it. And I thought, we need this here. So it got approved by the ministry, and now we have it, and it's terrific.
How many students?
It's a small class size. We average about 20 students per each year.
You see, this is interesting, because the assumption would be that if you're interested in this line of work up north, you got to come to Toronto. You're going to come south. You have to leave home.
That's right.
You're kind of putting a lie to that.
I am. What we're trying to do, one thing we do is we've compressed the curriculum, so it's a 3-year program compressed into 2. So the students are there for 6 consecutive semesters, kind of like a really intense acting boot camp. Which is actually more akin to the real world. I don't know, but no one that I know gets summers off for 3 months, right? So it gets them, I think, adjusted to what their lives might be like if they are working in the industry. At the same time, by working in a smaller city, there's less distractions, so you can focus in on that sort of submarine journey you're on with your classmates for 2 years. And at the same time, we bring in guest artists from all across the country who specialize in their areas. So the quality of teaching is on par with some of the more familiar theater schools that have been around 25 or 30 years. But we offer it in this kind of environment with those sort of unique perks, I think.
Now, you mentioned the Nipissing Theatre Company. Is there much theater, professional theater in North Bay?
In North Bay, not a lot of professional theater. It varies. There's a strong community theater base and a strong music base. And now there's also, we have within the college program, a repertory theater company that highlights the graduating acting company every year of students, which is directed by professional directors with guest professional actors working alongside them.
Now, I told you before we went on air
Yes.
that the day you were announced as the winner, or the day I guess we found out here at TVO that you had won, I happened at that very moment to be listening to a podcast of your lecture at Canadore College, where you compare Shakespeare's Henry V to professional hockey.
Yes.
Which, you know, obviously is it's right in my wheelhouse. I mean,
Okay.
that's right up my alley.
Great.
But where did this notion come from that the English and the French of Henry V were somehow analogous to the Montreal Canadiens and the Toronto Maple Leafs, which is
Okay.
the analogy you use?
I think on a broader level, Steve, I've always had a passion to try and make Shakespeare relevant to modern audiences and not let it be a dusty museum piece. And to get new audiences hooked onto Shakespeare, we've got to find ways into it. At the same time, I find the history of this country absolutely fascinating. I think we have an exciting, vibrant history that needs to be told. So in taking Shakespeare's work and finding a parallel contemporary setting that matches the original in terms of themes, that's what interests me. So I've always looked at that Henry V, you know, its nature of war, honor and duty, soldiership, victors, losers, all these different themes, violence, and looked at our own hockey mythology in this country, which anyway, we make our hockey players into national war heroes. We used to back in the days of the old six-cylinder league, especially in the 60s, right?
Six-cylinder league?
Yeah, the old six-cylinder league, right? Before the expansion all happened, right? And so there's a natural tie-in that I found as I began doing my research. And even when you being a hockey fan yourself, and you know, like the 60s, the Leafs in the 60s with Punch In, like he was training like scrappers and soldiers on the field, and that very much was similar to the English under Henry. They were older, they were destined to lose that battle at Agincourt. Likewise, the Leafs were destined to lose to the Canadians because they were a young, fast team. In 67, you know, they had Béliveau and the Pocket Rocket, Rogie Vachon, you know, and they were destined to lose. Yvon Cormier was new, and they were destined to, the Canadians were going to easily beat them. And of course, you know, in the end, I guess, grizzled age and vigor won out, and the Leafs won. Likewise, in the Henry play, against 5-1 odds, the English beat the French in Agincourt, 14-15. Last time the English were ever victorious in France, and as we know, being Satin Leaf fans, 67 is the last time the Leafs ever drank champagne out of the Stanley Cup.
Thanks for reminding me.
I know.
Yeah,
I know. Well, yeah.
Unfortunately, the analogy doesn't hold up so much anymore today, though, does it? Because right now it's our Swedes and Finns and Russians. Not as good as their Swedes and Finns.
What was the
and
end of an era, right? Also, that time, the French-English rivalry between those teams was before we had major separatist political parties. So our politics was played out on ice every Saturday night with Foster Hewitt's broadcast. And it wasn't just Canadians versus Leafs. It was French versus English. It was England versus France. It was the Plains of Abraham. It was Wolfe and Montcalm all over again on the alabaster ice.
Well, let's go with Montreal Canadiens are the French.
Yes.
Toronto Maple Leafs are the English.
Yes.
Let's extend the analogy.
Yes.
Who's Henry V?
Henry V? Davy Keon.
Davy Keon is Henry V.
Yes, that was my basis for Henry V. Yep, in terms of he was the captain of the team, and he was the motivator.
Armstrong was the captain.
But Keon was the captain. I'm sure he was.
I thought George Armstrong was the captain.
I'm sure he was the captain.
Okay, $5 right now.
Okay. I thought George Armstrong was the assistant captain. We have to look into this. I'm sure.
I'm going to settle this
because
before we go off the air.
Have to find out. I have to find out for sure.
But George Armstrong is the sort of First Nations content
very much
in
so.
this story,
and
right?
in terms of the English piece, he became Exeter, who was the messenger that went to the French and said, basically, here's what's coming down. A terrible thunder's coming down on you, right? And in exploring it in the role of Armstrong meeting Exeter, it brought that incredible primality of the land, right? And that First Nations background into it.
I appreciate that you're trying to make Shakespeare still relevant for people who spend way too much time watching rock videos and on their MP3 players and playing video games and all of that stuff. Can you tell whether you're succeeding?
I think you can. I think you can if you, well, feedback is one way, but you have an audience, you can tell if they're engaged. You can tell if they're actually watching and following and getting it, right? And I always try to solicit feedback, right? And I think, yeah, that's how I try to get it. Your audience will always let you know if what you're doing is working.
I have a bit of a home team advantage here.
All right.
You understand? Because there's a control room on the other side of that wall.
Yes.
And they've just looked it up online.
Yes.
And they say George Armstrong was the captain of
Well,
the
then
team.
congratulations, Steve. Keon was the center.
Keon was the center. Keon was the great young star.
Yep.
And I think actually he was the Conn Smythe Trophy winner that year as the best player in
Yeah.
the playoffs.
But in terms of my basis for Henry,
But he's
well,
your
was,
Henry.
Well, no, because he was young, and he was the center,
Yes.
and he was the team leader, and he was this fresh, hot guy.
Your analogy still works.
Oh, no, no.
Fret not.
Throw it out, you know what? We will cut that entire piece.
Have you got any theater arts projects on the go right now?
Right now, I do, actually. Our rep season, which we do at Canada, Rep 21, we come to Toronto in July, the last July 18th to 25th. And I am directing Martin McDonagh's piece, The Lieutenant of Inishmore. And if anyone doesn't know McDonagh, he is this wickedly funny Anglo-Irish writer. He's kind of like Quentin Tarantino meets Brian Friel, just takes the whole Irish folk tradition and puts an acetylene torch to it. He's hilariously funny. Recently, his film In Bruges did very well with Colin Farrell, right? And he won an Oscar 2 years ago for his short film, Six Shooter. Anyhow, this piece is the first piece I know of that actually takes a look at terrorism from a point of view as a farce.
Do your students ever look at you and, I mean, leather jacket and the shoes and the headpiece and the jewelry, and do they ever think, you're too cool for school, man?
They never tell me that. I don't know. No, I'm just comfortable, and I've been doing this for a long time, and it's just, you got to be yourself and be doing what you're doing.
And you are. Let me ask you one last thing. You
Sure.
won the competition, and therefore Canadore College is going to get $10,000 courtesy of TD Insurance Meloche Monix.
Yes.
Now, if it were up to you,
Yes.
and I gather it's not, but if it were up to you on how that $10,000 were to be spent, what would you do with it?
I take that $10,000, and each year I'd break it into a $1,000 scholarship fund, and it would be given at the 5th semester to a student who, from that 5-semester journey, has shown the greatest amount of improvement and growth, and also shows a financial need. So it's a scholarship that has to be earned over their journey through the program, and seeing that kind of growth. And I think that's a great way to acknowledge a student, because that's what it's all about, right? Watching the growth curve of someone. So,
Administration, are you listening?
I hope so.
Rod, congratulations again, and we of course invite all of our viewers to, if they missed it originally on Big Ideas, go to tvo.org/Big Ideas. The lecture is there. It's a terrific lecture, very engaging. Your kids obviously like you. I can't call them kids. Your students.
My students.
Your students, your future actors, directors,
That's
and so on, obviously liked your performance and your lecture.
And I'll give
so
you
well done.
a P.S. George Armstrong still has family living in North Bay.
He does, eh?
He does, yeah.
That's good stuff.
Yeah. And he was captain of the Leafs. Did you know that?
I'd heard that somewhere.
I know.
Where did I hear that?
Yeah.
Good stuff, Rod. Thank you.
Thanks, Steve. Thanks.